Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of the Final Fantasy FXN podcast. I'm your host, David Turner, and I'm joined by co-host Katya.
Hey.
And also we're joined by Josh.
FXN.
Our outline for this episode is we're going to be starting things off with our news segment, and boy do we ever have a whole lot of news. I think it's probably the most we've ever had. Then we'll move right on to our questions segment, and strangely enough, it's actually probably the fewest questions we've had, so then we'll move on to our feature discussion. And if you're a first-time listener, the Final Fantasy FXN podcast is a monthly podcast presented by the Final Fantasy FXN Network. You can subscribe to us on the iTunes Store, the Miro podcast directory, YouTube, and of course, finalfantasy-fxn.net. So we'll head right along to our news segment. Our first news this month is that Drakenguard 3 is in development. And some information about this game is that the game is an action RPG for the PlayStation 3, and it's going to be taking place before the first Drakenguard game, and pacts are still in, but not the same way as they were in the older games. It features two main characters, 0 and 1. They are sisters and are given numeric names to represent that. 0 has a prosthetic leg to balance the change from the male protagonist to female. Also, she has a flower in one of her eyes to give her a unique design. So I'm starting to get pretty confused about this.
Oh, yeah.
Both 0 and 1 are said to be Utao Tai, which are people with special powers that can manipulate magic using songs. The game will feature mature themes. 0 is said to be a liberal-minded character with promiscuous tendencies. She will also have an ability to gain power as she bathes in blood of her enemies.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit violent.
Yeah.
The game features the Dream Team from previous games, Yoko Taro as creative director, Takamashi Shiba as producer, Keiichi Okabe as composer, and Kimihiko Fujisaka as character designer. Drakengard, the last story. I just love my failed attempts at pronouncing those names. The game is no longer made by Katya, the company that has been dissolved, and is currently developed by Access Games, who have created Premonition. So, Katya, I'm going to have to confess here, I'm royally confused about what this game is, so maybe you want to just fill us in a little bit.
The game, I think a lot of people are excited for it, not because of the first two games, but because of the success that was NieR. And since it was developed by Katya and that was dissolved, a lot of people thought this will never ever happen. And this was a very surprising announcement, especially considering the guy left the company that the Katya was turned into. And
so what was like NieR about? Because I remember it being announced fairly early in this generation, and it got quite a bit of publicity, but I don't know if it actually...
Yeah, it was...
Did it review well?
It got, like 7-ish scores. Okay. And it was advertised as a very Western game, although it was developed by a Japanese company. Although in Japan they actually had a release with a different looking male character to make him look more Japanese. Yeah, but so a lot of people in the West dismissed it because they thought it looks bad, so it's probably going to be bad. But then a lot of people played it and they realized that it's actually pretty good, as it had very good story and very great atmosphere, and the word spread, and I think it has a pretty good following now, which is why people are excited.
Yeah, and it actually looks like it sold not bad. I think the PS3 version sold 500,000 games, and the 360 like 150,000. So
yeah, the game had a very good legs up to its release, and I think like a lot of people are looking forward to it because NieR was pretty major improvement over those two games. And even though it's called NieR, it's actually technically a sequel to the first Drakenguard game, as it continues from one of the endings. So people probably think it's gonna be in the same style story-wise, as it had a lot of twists that were unexpected, and it was a very emotional experience.
Honestly, my experience with NieR ended rather quickly. There was that fishing minigame thing that you had to do to continue on, and I couldn't figure it out, and the one time I actually caught something, I caught a bucket.
It was so easy. Like, I never had problems with it.
It was so hard. I tried for like an hour, and I finally caught a bucket, and I'm just like...
And if I can play...
I'm not playing this anymore.
If I can figure it out in Japanese, how can't you figure it out in English?
Maybe I was playing the vastly inferior Xbox version. Who knows?
Nah, but it's the same.
Well, explain this to me, because the game was actually like 2 games. It was Nier Replicant and Nier something.
Gestalt.
Oh, okay, yeah. So what's the difference between the two? Were they the same? Just different character?
It was basically the same thing, except Gestalt was released in the West, and it featured a character who is supposed to be the father figure to the little girl. And in Japan, it was the brother of the little girl. And that was mainly the only difference. Although they later released a book that told stories that are not shown in the book, in the game, which, have some difference about their pasts. But otherwise, it's basically the same thing.
Okay. And some, quote, high-quality screenshots were also released for the game. And, well, I'm going to be honest with you, they look just terrible.
They do.
1 out of every 5 looks just fine.
I mean, they might pass for a PSP game.
I think they were probably either a PSP game or Vita. I mean, considering now it's made by Access Games, and Access Games, I think, developed one of the Vita games for Square Enix before this. So I think they were probably working for something for the Vita and just turned it into a console game, since Vita is not selling well.
Maybe this game was originally a Vita game,
Most
but
likely.
they want to have better sales for the PS3 one.
I really find the only problem is in the character models. I mean, the background's a little textured, I guess, but it's not, terrible. I think it's mainly the character models for me.
I think everything looks bad, the game.
Well, yeah, but you hate everything, David. So it's fine.
I mean,
No, but the series are not really known for great graphics anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Drakenguard 1 and 2, they look like, very early PlayStation 2 games, almost PlayStation 1 at some parts. So, it was always a very low-budget games.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Square Enix did not give them a lot of money to work with.
Maybe not.
To begin with.
Yeah, we're going to be talking more about the graphics in our feature discussion. So we'll move things right along and talk about Final Fantasy X HD, because it was recently announced that they will be also including Final Fantasy X-2 HD for the PS3 version of the game. And the PS3 version will come with both versions. However, the Vita versions you'll have to buy separately. Yeah, not sure about that decision, but we'll see what happens.
Supposedly it's because they can't fit it.
Expensive.
Supposedly they can't fit it?
That's what I read. Supposedly they can't fit it on one Vita, whatever.
But they could sell it, as a combo pack or put 2 cartridges in one. I think remember Type 0, I think they had 2 UMDs back then.
Yeah, it did have 2 UMDs.
I think it's all about the money here. They're just trying to...
they're probably reaching for a little extra cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because considering the PS3 version is said to be cost $40, I mean, they're not gonna charge any less than $30 for each Vita game, I think. So it's gonna be a rip-off, especially if you want to have both Vita and PS3 versions.
Right. So some screenshots of the game, as well as the trailer, was shown for Final Fantasy X and X-2. And I think my opinions of the graphics for they released some Vita screenshots, and I wasn't too impressed with those, but the ones that they showed here are much better. They're I think definitely the PS3 version is running, and character models, huge improvements, but there's also some really nice improvements with the lighting and textures, and everything looks really well anti-aliased, so very impressive.
They totally redid Titus's face and hair, and it looks a lot more realistic and just better, I think.
Yeah, Titus has a huge improvement there.
It was one of those things where I didn't realize how bad it was originally until I saw the comparison.
Yeah, and also the FMV sequences they appear to be running in full 1080p. I'm guessing they re-rendered it.
But they also cropped them. You look at them. The cut of the top and the bottom to fit in widescreen.
Yeah, I seem to remember that. I wonder if they'll re-render at a different aspect ratio to correct that.
There were comparison pictures, and they clearly had cut off parts. They had original ones and the one that they released.
Well, that's too bad.
They probably just took original ones and just cut stuff off. Most of those HD collections that get released, most of them don't redo anything at all in terms of FMV and CG stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just pretty glad that these are the international versions of the game. Pretty good for me anyway, because I never got to play those.
Oh yeah, I'm also looking forward for X-2 stuff, because I think it had an extra dungeon, and you could capture monsters, I think.
Yeah, and I want X HD to fight the Dark Aeons and Penance. I've heard he's pretty tough.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be a trophy for that.
Probably. So I'll never get 100% on this game.
Sadly, I probably will.
I'm gonna go for it, but
Probably
I
gonna be
always
very
try to
challenging
play at
platinum.
RPGs, but I don't know. It's too much time.
Yeah. The voice acting though, it's still it bothers me.
ha 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 ha. That's my impression.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one actually.
Thank you.
You could probably pass as the voice actor.
James Arnold Taylor.
Yeah.
So does that mean I can also be Ratchet?
Yeah, that's right. Although he actually sounds good in Ratchet and Clank. So.
It fits Ratchet better than Titus.
Yeah, it just didn't work. Luckily, I think for the most part, the voice actors in Square Enix games have improved since then. That was obviously their first attempt, and it was, I think, pretty sad.
Stay away from the summoner.
Yeah, stay away from the summoner.
Wouldn't they need to get them back now for the extra stuff?
What's that?
Wouldn't they need to get them back to get the international stuff recorded?
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe they could re-record some lines, who knows?
Well, didn't they have them voice the? I don't know exactly what's in the international stuff. Like, was there actually extra cutscenes?
I think it was just extra fights. I don't know if there was an extra cutscene.
I think 10-2 might have.
10-2 had extra scenes going up the optional dungeon.
Yeah.
Like every 10 floors or something like that.
So, with this new information, do you think you'll be getting the game now? And if so, for what system?
Yes, PS3.
PS3, okay. And Katya,
Yep.
what about you?
Yes, but I'm still undecided. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I would rather play them on the Vita, but I kind of want to have the PS3 version.
Oh yeah. I really don't think I'll be getting this.
Why not, David?
Because of the voice acting.
Come on, David.
You can mute it.
I don't know. I also have so many games that I still need to play, and I just can't see myself getting it. But you never know. You know, at best, like if I were to get a Vita at some point, I'd actually probably get it for that, to be honest, because I don't really care too much about 10.2, so I'd probably only get 10 anyways. So if it is like $10 cheaper, why not? So that would probably be my decision. So moving right along, Final Fantasy V will be getting a port for iOS and Android devices. The port will be based off of the GBA port of the version of the game. So basically, it's a port of a port.
That's how I like all my iOS games.
The porting is just getting a little bit ridiculous, but whatever. And the game has now been released at the end of March. I'm not sure the actual territories that the game has been released in. It might have been worldwide, but I'm not positive on that.
I'm pretty
I wouldn't
sure
see
it's
why it
been
wouldn't be.
released everywhere.
Yeah, I would think so by now, if not like on that day. What were you saying, Josh?
I'm saying the porting isn't quite as ridiculous as Final Fantasy 1 just yet.
Oh, yeah.
That game's been released on like every console.
Yeah.
But is it really a port? I mean, it's more like a remaster of a port, since they changed the sprites.
Well, I think the
Obviously.
GBA version would qualify.
No, but GBA had
Oh.
sprites in the same style as how they used to be, and here they remade it more like Final Fantasy Dimensions. I mean, I
Right,
find
yeah,
them
I was
ugly.
thinking of the DS version, I think, which I think exists, right? There's a DS
No.
version of 5.
Nope.
There's a DS version of 3
Last
and 4.
one was for
Maybe I'm thinking of
GBA.
4. Okay. Yeah, I think they should have made it look more like the Final Fantasy 1 remakes that they had for the PSP. I think those looked really nice
They were very well done.
with the kind of high definition pixel art,
Yeah.
which looked awesome. But these the sprites don't look really that great.
They look very cheap, like RPG Maker
Yeah.
stuff.
Something like that. Who knows? Maybe that's what they use.
I've never, it's probably like the only Final Fantasy that I've never played. And I, mean, I was really looking forward to this, but after all the
You're missing
sprites,
out.
I don't want to touch that.
Just buy the PS1 version, because
I'll wait. Maybe they're gonna put the GBA version for eShop on 3DS. I'm hoping for that someday.
I'll be honest with you, I think it's better than Final Fantasy VI.
Nah.
I think it is, and I think it's also better than 13,
Come on, everything is better than 13.
and it might even be better than 10. But
Nope.
I'm just not much of a fan of 10. So.
Stop ruining my childhood, David.
Yeah, well, no, 5 was great. It took me probably until my second playthrough to actually appreciate it, though.
I got stuck on the fire ship and quit.
Fire
Like-
ship.
Yeah, like you go to like 3 crystals have already been shattered, and you go to the fire crystal, and that's when you meet Sid, and you have to go in the ship to stop the crystal.
Right,
And I got totally lost and just quit. I
Yeah,
was
some of the dungeons
done.
are just mazes.
I couldn't tell like what was a wall and what was a floor. So
Yeah.
maybe it was just the port I was playing, but it was pretty bad.
It was a fun game, though.
And I'll keep waiting and waiting.
The job system is what made it awesome. Like, it's still great today.
Yeah, the job system was a lot of fun, but I just couldn't, progress in the game, so I gave up.
Sometimes happens. All right, so our next piece of news is Final Fantasy Lightning Returns screenshots and information. Square Enix released some screenshots and artwork for Lightning Returns, and they look kind of cool. In addition to the screenshots, some information about the game was also released, and Lightning is in contact with a member of the Thieves Guild. Their leader seems to have heard of Lightning. This leader is someone who has appeared in the series and someone who Lightning probably knows. Wow, who do you guys think that might be? Is it maybe Noel or something?
Well, Noel's evil, so it can't be him.
Guys.
Noel is evil? Spoilers.
Spoiler alert, everybody dies. The end.
Was already dead.
Maybe it's Riku from Final Fantasy X.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
No,
She was
maybe
a
Cloud
thief.
would be better.
Of some kind.
If they go for a crossover, they should just go for the big one, grab Cloud.
I mean, technically, Lightning and Cloud, they could make some plot twists about them being twins.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
always the talk about their lookalikes, so maybe there's some interesting story implications going on there.
Many of fan fiction have already covered this, David.
Okay. The desert that stretches outside the oasis is a danger zone. Here, exploration will take place across the desert. So my guess is the desert might be sort of like the open area that they had in Final Fantasy X, where
That was terrible, because all your party members were gone, and you had to wander around. It was pretty bad.
all your party members were gone. What?
In the desert,
Did I say Final Fantasy X?
you did.
Oh, I meant Final Fantasy 13. The open area in
When you get to Pulse,
13? Yes.
I don't even
Okay.
remember the desert in there.
it's right after the
The
fourth
Al-Med
temple.
Desert?
Yeah, it's right after the fourth temple, and Sin comes and destroys the ice, and you fall, and then somehow you wake up in the desert.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll really like that too much, because it seemed like a good idea to have the wide open area, but maybe it was just the way I played through the game. But I always like to play the story first and then do side quests later. So I basically went straight to the cave or wherever you had to go, and
Yeah, the tunnel.
the tunnel, and I thought that was it. That was the wide open. That's where the game was supposed to open up.
Maybe if they're gonna do it like Grand Pulse, maybe fill it with things to do and not just be one big empty area.
Mhm.
Nothing.
It's one big side quest. This
Yeah,
whole game
so-
is one big side quest.
We'll see how that turns out. I'm sure it's actually better than what I'm thinking, but we'll see. In the Dead Dunes, you can undertake quests from the inhabitants of the oasis. Within the oasis, you can chat to the inhabitants and listen to their stories, as well as buy items from the shops. And they actually had a screenshot of Lightning purchasing some merchandise from a shop or two. So that pretty much confirms that there are indeed shops, and, well, I guess we already knew that, but
But you can see it now.
now you can see it. Yeah. And items used for battle restoration can be found in treasure chests, as well as purchased through shops in town. Stamina can be restored by visiting an inn or even eating a meal. So that's
The
kinda
inns
cool.
are back.
The inns are indeed back.
I consider this game a success.
Eating a meal. I think a lot of other RPGs are doing that now, so it's quite common nowadays.
What if it's meal is just some item that restores health? It's not that much different than healing item.
Well, maybe stamina is something different, though.
Like a separate bar.
It could be
Yeah.
separate. Like, you know how you see Lightning going down the sand dunes, playing some kind of snowboarding on sand dunes type deal, and maybe that requires stamina.
Yeah.
All right, so that sums up our Final Fantasy Lightning Returns news. And now we come to the kind of the big news of this month.
Yeah.
Now, you can interpret this as however you want, positive or negative.
It's positive.
The news is that Yoichi Wada has stepped down from his position as CEO of Square Enix. And so he's been in this role for 13 years now. Was it year 2000 or 2001 that he became CEO? That was right around the time when they merged with Enix. And so he claims the reasons for him stepping down are because of Square Enix has seen significant losses. I think the number is somewhere around like 10 billion yen, so That's definitely more than just pocket change. But the thing that surprises me the most is that he mentioned that they were disappointed with the sales of some of their Western games that they've released, namely like Tomb Raider, Sleeping Dogs, and Hitman Absolution. They claim that they did not meet their expectations, and this is shocking because those games, all three of them, actually sold really well. I think Sleeping Dogs was somewhere around 1 or 2 million.
It was near 2 million.
Yeah, and Hitman, I think, was above 3 million, I think.
It was.
And Tomb Raider is now the best of those three. It's already sold like 3.5 million. And it even set a franchise record for the highest 1 week sales. And they're like, yeah, the games aren't selling as well as we expected.
Their expectations are so crazy, it's unbelievable.
I know, they mentioned their expectations for the sales, and I don't remember what they were for Sleeping Dogs and Hitman Absolution, but they're like, on average, 1 million above what they expected. But they were expecting Tomb Raider to sell 5 to 6 million copies, and probably its first month, which is...
But it hasn't even been 1 month when they released the statement, and they, basing it on about 3 weeks of sales, and call it a failure.
I wouldn't be surprised if the game does actually end up going to sell probably at least close to 5 million sales, but it wouldn't surprise me if it went up to 6 million, to be honest.
Yeah, Hitman has been out since fall, I think.
Yeah.
So it had a lot of time to sell as many copies as it did, and Tomb Raider just came out, and I think it's unfair that they judge it like that. And
and especially it's been getting lots of praise. It's one of the greatest games of the generation. A lot of people, I think, are saying just as good as Uncharted. Some people are saying it's better than Uncharted. So
there's a lot of good feedback.
Sleeping Dogs and Hitman also got really good feedback as well.
Yeah.
I think they all pretty much got 9s across the board.
Yeah, considering Sleeping Dogs is the first game that nobody knows about, the sales are very, very good for it. I think they expected 3 or 4 million sales for that. How can you expect it from a game that's not even a franchise? It's something that you build up over the years as you release games. Not just, release random game and then expect to sell gazillion of copies.
Yeah, I'm guessing what happened is that, at least in the case of Tomb Raider, they figured, because it's a well-known franchise, they figured, okay, well, this revival of the franchise is going to sell big, and so they put big money into it. And expecting it, okay, we're going to break even at
what kind of problems that they have. If they can put such huge budget into it, maybe they should trim the fat.
Yeah, maybe they're just breaking even at 3 million copies sold. So that's just not good enough, I guess. But I think their estimates were just ridiculous. I don't know how they could have expected it to sell 5 to 6 million copies that quickly. Those are Halo numbers essentially. And I think nobody in the right mind should expect that from any game other than Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, and Halo, and Gran Turismo probably you could throw in there.
We had similar discussions when 13.2 came out, and they also had crazy expectations for that, and it sold 500,000. And you can see they have problems with their management and what they do with the money, because as I was saying before, they had Tales of Xillia release that sold just as much and looked much better, and it was a new game without no reuse of old assets.
Yeah.
And they were happy with the results. And these guys release much worse product that requires much less sources, and they're still not happy.
Yeah.
There's definitely some problems with the structuring of how it all works for them.
And you can say the same thing about Final Fantasy 13 as well, since you remember Wada making the statement that was going to outsell Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah, right.
They're just not that smart.
I don't know the sales numbers for 13 now, but I'm guessing they're maybe with combined systems 6 million sales.
Probably.
Does that sound about right?
I think they hit equal numbers with 10 and 12. I think around that sales number.
Yeah, and 7 last time I checked was almost 10 million, between 9 and 10 million, I think it was.
I'm pretty sure if you include the download, it's probably doubled.
Yeah, I'm sure it's, not doubled, because...
not doubled, but,
over 10 million for sure, I think. So, do you guys think this is a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's good that Wada's gone.
Yeah. Well, he's not gone entirely. He's actually he's still going to be continuing to be involved with the company. I think he said that he wanted to kind of make up for the things he's done, so he's going to help out with the company in some other position.
And he's still president until like June.
Yeah, so he's still the CEO for a little while longer. And then who's replacing him? Is it
Matsuda.
Yeah. So we'll see how that guy does.
You have so much faith and confidence in him, David.
We'll
see.
We'll see with that guy if he's any good. But it will really be time that will be the biggest teller here. Also, I highly doubt we'll see any changes immediately because they already have a bunch of games currently in development. All right, so that just wraps up our news segment. I think we'll go straight ahead or into our question segment now. Our first question here is by Lyro1000, and he asks, from the screenshots of the Dead Dunes and Lightning Returns, we can see a mechanic for sliding down the dunes that is very similar to Journey on the PS3. What mechanics do you think could be added to improve the game from any game that you've played or one that you can think of? We'll start things off with Katya. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not really sure because the question is what they haven't put in yet. They put already so many things that I can't even think of what's not in that, most games don't have already.
Yeah, that's actually a really tough question. I mean, we've already brought up the Assassin's Creed thing and
feature discussion.
Yeah, and
I would have rather seen it be more like traditional RPG, but that's definitely not going to be in already.
I know a good one. They should try to take a game mechanic from a game called Final Fantasy VII. It's called the Active Time Battle.
I heard about that.
Amazing.
It's a pretty underground game. I've heard it's pretty good.
I think it only sold like 10 million copies. So.
That's it, man. Like really low numbers.
It's not get sold like Final Fantasy 13 or anything, which obviously outsold it.
Clearly.
And so just as Katya was saying, just kind of more traditional. And Josh, what would you have to say?
Well, looking down the list of things they haven't added yet, we don't have a first-person shooter running guide section yet. We have yet to include social links from Persona. We haven't recruited demons from the Shin Megami Tensei games, so there's a lot they could add.
But we recruited them in 13
First-person shooter.
They did put Monster Collection in 13 too, but that didn't really go over that well. So they should just put some game mechanics in a hat, shuffle it around a bit, draw one out, because it seems like that's what they're doing so far.
First-person shooter.
This game is a Frankenstein's monster.
We need a rail shooter segment.
Oh, man.
What about Chocobo Racing Simulator?
Oh yeah.
Maybe they should let us play as Chocobo. Or dress Lightning as Chocobo.
We'll get a just as in-depth story if we play a Chocobo.
I can't remember a proper Chocobo system since Final Fantasy IX. I think that was the last time they had decent Chocobos.
There were Chocobos in 10, but it was only for
I thought
two parts of the game.
I thought it was lame.
I mean, they were pretty good in 13 too. It's somewhat useful.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, how'd they do it in 13 too?
I mean, they had those platforming places, and Chocobos can jump and fly for small periods of time. Okay. So you could get to the chests. And
plus, if you got on the red Chocobos, you heard a totally awesome death metal Chocobo song. It's called Crazy Chocobo, David. Look it up sometime. It's ridiculous.
Death metal. Do they have growling?
I'm pretty sure there was growling at some point.
Nice. Speaking of growling, Final Fantasy X had some awesome growling and Otherworld.
Didn't Rammstein do that song?
No.
Or is that just an internet thing?
No, it was some other band. I think from Europe. It wasn't like a metal band. I don't think it was just like I don't know. I used to remember.
I heard something about Oyamasa saying that it was some guys that he knew, but then after they recorded, he disappeared and he never heard from him again.
Yeah, that's more along the story that I seem to remember. It was just like some people that sort of
played it,
were in a band,
sort of growled.
Yeah, probably some random guys I found in Japan.
Yeah,
maybe.
It's new English.
I've heard like a billion different stories for that song, so
That's a
who
great
knows?
one.
It was a pretty awesome track.
It was a nice change.
It's a backdrop for all my Dissidia battles. You know, all 2 that I have every year.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, so our next question is by DPD016 from YouTube. And he asks, since the CEO of Square has stepped down, it seems like everyone has an impression there might be great changes, but I don't. Do you guys feel the same way or actually see some great changes? And we'll start things off with Josh.
There's no clear sign that there's going to be great changes, but I'm really optimistic for the future because I don't think Wada was even like close to being able to run a business, it seemed like, with all the dumb decisions that he put forth.
Well, it wasn't him, it was his fortune teller.
Yeah.
Maybe what the company really needed was a new fortune teller.
Yeah.
And maybe he was getting the wrong fortune cookies.
Yeah. He got his personal fortune cookies mixed up with the business ones, and then bad things started happening.
Yeah, that must be it.
Yeah, clearly. I don't... Unless they change the entire business model, I don't know if too much change is going to happen, but I'm optimistic.
Well, what I think is that, right now they have a lot of games currently in development, and they can't just say, okay, well, we're canceling this game, or we're remaking Final Fantasy Lightning Returns into something that's totally different, and they can't really do that. So I think once all the games which are currently in development are released, then maybe we'll start to see some changes. But major changes probably won't happen till at least a year from now. Like maybe they'll start things fresh with the PlayStation 4. Maybe that's what'll happen. But yeah, it'll be a little ways away.
I think this is actually pretty decent timing for all this to go down, like right before the new generation.
Yeah, that is kind of good timing.
I mean, if they do well, this new guy could get some good rep. I mean, they have Fortune coming out, and then possibly Versus.
Yeah,
if that
maybe.
goes well.
There's always a chance that Versus could be released.
Yeah, there's a possibility that it might come out in 2015. You heard it here first on the FXN Final Fantasy Network.
It wouldn't surprise me if it did.
I'd be extremely disappointed. That's another 2 years. I don't think I could handle it.
Well, it's 2015. That's only like 1 year away from 10 years, so they could have the 10-year anniversary of Versus announcement by releasing the game.
By releasing a brand new rehash trailer.
Yeah. With some amazing car CG graphics.
Yeah.
And Katya, what do you think?
I mostly agree with you, David. I mean, I think there will be changes, but it will take some time. Like, they won't cancel everything that Wada already had running.
Right.
So that needs to run its course. And whether they will be good or not, it still remains to be seen, because we don't really know much about the new guy, other than that, he has financial background in the company, so maybe he's gonna work on the problems that they have, with giving big budgets and then expecting a lot of big number sales, which don't happen. So maybe he's gonna restructure that and rework it somehow. But then they also had news like he got, I think, a CEO from Eidos as a Square Enix holding president now.
Okay.
So maybe it's gonna try to be even more Western now. So I don't know whether that's good or not.
Yeah, we'll see. Just as long as there's a distinguishment between their Western games and their Japanese games, like I think it's fine if they like have Tomb Raider. Obviously, you don't want to see a Japanese version of Tomb Raider, although that might be interesting.
I mean,
be very
technically,
strange.
I mean, isn't current Tomb Raider has Visual Works CG and FMV at the beginning?
I have no idea.
I remember them showing a trailer that was mostly FMV.
But as long as we don't see Final Fantasy, the first-person shooter or something like that.
But we have shooting in Versus.
I don't.
One of the characters can shoot.
Just because they have a gun doesn't mean it's a Western game. I mean, Barrett had a gun.
He had a gun arm. He was hardcore.
That's true. That was more Japanese.
No, but we couldn't actually, go into first-person view with Barrett.
Yeah.
With this guy we could.
I'm telling you guys, there's going to be a first-person shooter running gun segment in Lightning Returns. I'm calling it now.
There could be.
It's the next to be drawn out of the hat of game mechanics.
Yeah, so kind of as a follow-up of this question, assuming there are going to be changes at some point, what do you guys think that these changes would be, or what do you hope the changes would be?
Not get so bogged down with development, like clear their schedule and focus on a few projects at a time instead of what we have now where there's maybe games happening.
Yeah.
There might be games. We don't know.
And games announced way too long in advance. And
Yeah, and maybe some more transparency about the games they're working on instead
Yeah.
of, closed curtains.
Maybe.
Yeah, it seems like the past 10 years almost, anytime that they've been at an event, it's been behind closed doors. Only press can see it. We're not showing it to the public. I think they've improved lately, in the past few years. I think
I agree.
they've kind of given up on that.
I mean, they improved by not showing anything at all.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
serious,
true.
that's an
That's automatically an improvement.
Yeah, like now when you see them going to gaming events, it's like, okay, we're showing off these DS games.
Here
Yeah,
is
but
all
mostly,
the,
it's
all
been
the
mostly
bravest.
Eidos and no
Yeah.
Japanese games at all, other than Fortune.
Yeah,
I don't think Square knows how games work anymore.
yeah. It seems like they're just kind of disconnected. But for me, I think the biggest thing I'd like to see is far fewer portable. I mean, like phone games in particular.
Come on, you want all the
Oh,
bravest
that's still
too.
gonna happen.
and
I
the
think.
and the all the bravest expansion, adding characters from Final Fantasy, Lightning Returns.
I mean, I don't have a phone, and so I don't believe in that type of gaming.
Wow, that's a little harsh.
I think I can speak for
But they did release some good games on the phone, believe it or not.
like what?
Chaos Rings. That's actually
No.
very good.
Final Fantasy IV: The After Years was originally a phone game, and that's an excellent game.
Well, I guess I speak for the minority, people who don't own phones. I'm sorry, I'm not cool enough.
You can
Just
always
don't
catch
believe
up
it.
to us,
Yeah,
Just don't,
maybe you'll be as cool as us one day, David.
you just don't believe in them. They're
You have hope
stupid.
for you.
They suck. So those are our questions for this episode. If you have any more questions you'd like to ask us, you can go to the finalfantasy-fxn.net forums and ask in the questions thread. So now we'll move straight along to our feature discussion.
Feature discussion.
This time we're going to be talking about, can games with graphics like Drakenguard 3 survive in today's market? So if you haven't seen the screenshots yet for Drakenguard 3, I highly recommend you take a browse at them.
They kind of suck.
Yeah, you'll notice a severe lack of anti-aliasing going on, and some PS2 quality textures, and a color palette
PS2 is
that
being too
non-existent.
generous.
Yeah, and I mean the color palette is non-existent. I think I saw two colors, red and gray. So, yeah.
Hey, come on. There was some green and brown.
Some blue too.
Yeah, there's a PS1 quality tree in the background, so there was some green on there.
Yeah, well, that was in Lightning Returns too. So
Oh, that's true.
It's a new trend.
I guess they're just reusing that asset. So, being the end of this generation of consoles, and with PS4 and Nextbox around the corner, can a game with poor graphics like this actually do well?
I think it might be okay because of how niche this game is.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if a Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, the big players this generation could get away with it.
No, definitely not. But yeah, as you said, because the game is so niche, I think people are just going to get it regardless. They could release a PS1 game running on the PS3, and I'm sure people would still want to play it purely because of the story.
It's Drakenguard 3.
Yeah, purely because of the story and as Katya said, the atmosphere. The game is just so unique and good.
Yeah, I don't think it's
So-
gonna get any new players interested in it because of the graphics, but I
Yeah,
think the
that's-
existing fan base won't care.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think that's maybe why they're doing this, because they don't really care to appeal to new people to the franchise. They only want to have there's enough of their dedicated fan base to buy the game in whatever state. So
And I don't think
they're
that
just
I don't
making
think
it
it's
for
not
them.
like they don't care. I think it's probably the budget because when
Yeah.
they released Nier, it also suffered from this problem. Not that bad, but they tried to save money on cutscenes. We didn't have a lot of animations. Sometimes it went to the point where they would have a screen go dark and they would just tell the story in text because they
Oh,
clearly
really?
couldn't afford it.
Yeah, I was watching one of your screen capture videos of you playing Nier, and man, those animations look ancient.
Yeah. That game doesn't look good, but money on anything they possibly could. I think the guys have very ambitious ideas, but they just don't have the funds to make it be on the quality of Final Fantasy. If they would have, I think if they would have the same budget like Final Fantasy games, it could be like a very amazing game, but they just probably didn't have much to work with.
Yeah.
That's probably the case here because, I mean, there was an interview recently. The director, after they finished Drakenguard 2, he came to Square Enix to do Drakenguard 3 on the console. They didn't even want to do it. And now it was the same story. Kind of worked it out, but I don't see them spending a lot on this game.
So what do you guys think about like just games in general? Is it acceptable to have a game looking this poor in the console's lifetime? Like in the beginning of the generation, you'd hear a lot of people complaining about the PS3 and how it's difficult to develop for. But those days are long gone now, I think. I think it's safe to say that people know how to develop for it reasonably well now.
I've seen some people joke around like, maybe they're just trying to make the graphics look retro, like PlayStation 1 graphics. You know how they make games look 8-bit right now? And it's popular.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so people were joking, maybe they're trying to make it look like PlayStation 1 graphics.
Yeah.
It's exactly what all the fans want.
Yeah.
Low-textured PS1 games.
It doesn't work, though. Like, the 8-bit kind of works because it has kind of a style to it, but... Yeah. It doesn't work for PS1 looking graphics because really all you have are these low quality textures.
Come on, David. PS1 has a style. It's called bad.
I think the only kind of style I think that would work would be something like a pre-rendered background like they had for Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. I think that's the only style that might work for like...
I mean, Vagrant Story, I don't think it had pre-rendered backgrounds, right?
I don't think so. I think it had full 3D.
And it had decent art style.
I think the character models were only slightly above Final Fantasy VII.
Mm-hmm. It looked
I never played the game, but I remember seeing some trailers of it. So,
but yeah, I mean, this kind of games, I don't think it would work with pre-rendered backgrounds.
No, it's just too. The world is too like it has to be 3D.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to ride the dragons, you're not gonna just make it on pre-rendered backgrounds. It's not gonna work.
Well, I mean, the battles were 3D.
But the battles are also in a large open areas.
Yeah.
Well, it's also an action game, not a...
that's a good point.
Not random counter.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess it definitely wouldn't work.
But this also looks like it was probably a Vita game, so maybe if they would have stuck to that, it wouldn't feel so bad as it does on PS3.
Yeah. Maybe they would have been better off making a Vita, because on the smaller screen, it might... Look
a little sharper.
A little sharper, yeah. Like those textures.
They might exist on the Vita.
They might
exist. I mean, people not so judgmental when it comes to handhelds.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a lot with a lot of things.
Yeah, because the resolution is so high for a small screen. The anti-aliasing isn't as much of a problem either. It might be considered passable there. But a game like Drakenguard is a niche title with a dedicated fan base, so poor graphics probably won't affect sales that much, as we already mentioned. But is that really an excuse not to make a good attempt at the game's graphics? And also, is this a disservice to fans? The developers know that a reasonable number of people will buy it regardless of what it looks like, so they may make the game for as little budget as possible to maximize profit. And we already kind of mentioned that maybe they don't really have a choice because their budget, just to begin with, they don't have a choice. Like, it's just low.
And probably out of all the series out there, this is probably the only ones that can get away with it, if you think about it.
I'm sure if the developers had the budgets that Final Fantasy or, Kingdom Hearts got, they'd love to make it as, high quality as they possibly could, but they probably don't get hardly anything for this,
Mm-hmm. But you can also look at some of the indie games that come out. Some of them are actually really nice looking, and they
like Fez.
I'm not familiar. I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with.
But those games made by one or two people, and they have as much time as they want to work on it, and they don't have to answer to anybody.
But
this is a large structured company where you have to work with what they give it to you.
Yeah, I guess you're on a time limit. Like, it has to be released Christmas season 2013.
And Fez, I think it was 2D game or 2D looking game.
Yeah, most indie games are 2D or pseudo 3D. But I mean, there are some full 3D ones and are actually quite nice.
Minecraft.
Minecraft.
It was an indie game and now it's not.
Yeah, but that's not a very nice looking game.
I don't. It has a charm about it.
It has a style, but you can't really say those graphics are good.
I mean, you can't call them bad, but you can't call them good either. They just exist.
Now, my biggest worry is that with this game, like, what if it's a kind of double whammy in terms of bad graphics, where not only the graphics are bad, but what if the game's performance is also pretty terrible? Like, what if it can't keep a steady 30 frames per second? What if it's constantly dropping to 15 or some
I can see
ridiculous
that
thing like
happening.
Yeah. What was Nier like?
I mean, I'm not an expert about frames per second like some
Yeah.
people are, but I mean, it wasn't the best frame rate ever, so
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be good here either. I mean, if they have dragons over large areas, it's probably gonna be a mess also.
Maybe it'll be like Lair.
I was about to say that.
But who cares? It's all about the story.
Well, yeah, for this game,
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Why don't you just make it a visual novel then?
I wouldn't mind that.
I imagine people would be pretty upset if they did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think they're making manga about it, so.
So that wraps up our feature discussion.
Feature discussion.
Feature discussion. So that just about does it for our podcast. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Miro Podcast Directory, YouTube on our Final Fantasy FXN channel, and of course, FinalFantasy-FXN.net. Our next episode will be released in the second week of May.
See you guys next month.
Yeah, see you guys next time.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Do 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 do